I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years, and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all, we promised we'd be cordial.
All right. Thank you to my amazing co-host and partner in multiple business ventures, Frank King, the mental health comedian. Frank, thanks for joining me on this very special show.
Would not have missed it.
We have Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas with us. Sally, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm actually calling in from Orlando, Florida today at the Podcast Movement Conference, and I'm learning so much about podcasting. My head is exploding. So very thrilled to be here and part of your network.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited that you're here. It's amazing. Frank, every person that Frank has introduced me to has been just, another level of do-gooder in the world, which is amazing.
Well, and Sally will put an end to that right now. That's free. That's free.
I didn't pay him to say that, so I'm not going to go into it further. So, Sally, tell our listeners a little bit about, why you do the work that you do.
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist by training and was in the field of mental health for about 16 years when my younger brother, Carson, took his life in 2004. And, as many points in tragedy are in our lives, that became a turning point for me to really make suicide prevention and suicide grief support a calling in my life. And so I just started talking, and no one's been able to shut me up since.
Yes. I have plenty of people that envision me with different kinds of ball gags and all kinds of things in my mouth, and they've never won. And I'm so happy about that.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about, because one of the things that happened to me is in the aftermath of his death, here I am, all this training, all this, experience. And I realized there was so much I didn't know about suicide prevention and suicide grief support. And if I didn't know it, I'm pretty sure, 99% of the world didn't know it either. And so I guess we were talking a lot about superpowers here at this conference. And I was like, what is my superpower? I'm not really that smart. I'm not really that athletic. I don't know what it is. But I think what it is I can help translate things. So I can, understand the research, translate it to the general population. I can listen to what the clinicians are saying and make that accessible to the everyday person. In a bunch of different cultures and contexts. So that's what excites me, is kind of involving people in this work.
Yeah, I just saw Dr. Sanjay Gupta speaking at an event in Virginia, and I was watching him and I was like, I'm sure he's multi-talented in many other ways, but I thought, here's where I can see he's really talented. He knows how to take very complex subjects and break it down so that everybody can understand what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, I think that's been a big problem in our field, is that the academics kind of sit in their own little echo chamber, and they love talking to one another. But if your research is going to make a difference, you've got to be talking to the rest of the world about it.
That's right.
And I love lifting up their work. They're often very humble people, but they're doing amazing things. And so it's just, I love to kind of spread their wisdom and their knowledge to others who can really benefit from it.
I know I had someone who's like a leading expert in Munchausen syndrome, and he's the most quiet person ever. And he was like, I don't think I could come on and do I don't think I'd be a guest. I wouldn't be good. And I'm not really into like tooting my own horn. And I said, don't worry. I will toot your horn for you. That's my job. You just come on and talk.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, you got to have your horn tutors out there. I mean, it takes a special skill. People don't think it's a skill because we make it look easy, but there is a skill to hosting and speaking and those kind of things. And if it looks easy, listeners, it's because we've worked really, really hard to make it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Sally, what was the impetus for you doing a podcast? You do Hope Illuminated. I'm so excited that it is on our network. It's amazing, especially right now with everything that's gone on recently and has been going on with mass violence, but now 2 things in 1 week, probably more than that we don't even know about. But it's just the impetus has been amazing. So it's like the perfect time to launch what you're doing. And so talk about that. And then I'm going to get into what day it is today that we're doing the show.
Yeah, thank you. So, going back to, again, my brother's story, when I started to dig in and realized all the things I didn't know and decided to do bold gap-filling work to prevent what happened to Carson from happening to other people, it led me in a couple of directions. One is around workplace suicide prevention. So, right, we're going to reach youth in schools. We're going to reach working-age adults in the workplace. And that made a lot of sense, but it didn't get traction until really just the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Where now most of my time is spent in front of industry. And the other is men's mental health. And this is how I've known Frank for a really long time, but how we reconnected just, in the last couple of years again to pull together a men's anthology that we called Guts, Grit, and the Grind. And we invited men to share their stories of coming through really difficult times and suicide.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. For me, having a male, only one child, and he's a male, great friends with my ex-husband, surrounded by men in my life, Frank King, another important male in my life. So yeah, thank you for doing that book. Oh my gosh.
Well, and can I give you a little story about the genesis of that book?
Yeah, absolutely. Share.
Yes. I met Sally years ago, a decade ago. She was doing the fundraiser for the Carson J Spencer Foundation, and I went out and I auctioneered for her in an airplane and helicopter hangar that was hotter than the hinges of hell. And I was sweating like George Bush at a spelling bee. Anyway, the Sally and Sarah Gare are the co-author.
Oh, she's wonderful. Yep.
Yeah, suicide prevention trainer, mostly male, mostly first responders. I love her opening line. Hi, my name's Sarah Gare. I specialize in men. She went looking for a book on men's mental health at Barnes & Noble, couldn't find it. Went online at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, couldn't find it. So thought, there's a gap in the market. So she got together with Sally. They chatted about it. And then Sally thought, wow, I'm guessing I'm putting words in your mouth, Sally, but it would probably help if this was a little bit funny. So let's call Frank King. So they called me up and they said, would you be willing to make the book funny? And I said, wait a minute. You two ladies are writing a book on men's mental health? I don't suppose you could use, a man? And they went, oh my God, a man. So that's how I got brought on board.
Yes, it's been a delightful partnership ever since. We say, yeah, he brings the man to the manual.
That's right.
Let's just fangirl or fan woman a bit about Frank. Is he the best collaborator with women?
He is amazing. He's been so patient with Sarah and I, especially. We're going in this direction. Nope. This direction. Nope. 3 years later, he's like, okay, I'm along for the ride. Just keep telling me where to, point my nose and I'll follow along. It's so great, Frank. And I'm so grateful for all you bring, not just your humor, but your get it done attitude and your kindness and generosity. Such a gift to all of us.
I think he has 800 rocks that he's banged his head on that we don't even know about sitting beneath it. I do the same thing. I'm like, oh God, Frank this is the thing that's going to make Frank go, I've had it.
Yeah.
Coming back. So.
Well, I think it is because my dad died very young. I was raised by women. My mother and all her, turns out she was actually gay. I didn't know that till years later. Surrounded by women, I've got a keynote called "Everything I Need to Know I Learned from a Lesbian," and from changing a tire to fishing to cutting my steak to pitching a tent.
Yeah.
And there's a history in the South, strong Southern women. There's a great book called All Over But the Shoutin' by Rick Bragg, New York Times writer, grew up on the border of Arkansas and Georgia, dirt poor, itinerant father, came and went, mother raised them, and he won the Pulitzer. And he says, and I mean, when I was listening to his book, he read it out loud. He read the audiobook. I'm driving down the highway listening to his book. I'm sure it's because I was raised by a strong Southern woman, and I am weeping driving. I'm sure people driving by go, "Oh, don't look, he's going to a funeral." The line that just tore me out of my tree is my mama let me climb up her spine out of poverty. And I thought, oh, dear God. Yeah, so I think that's why, that my friendship with women, and I think I've got more women friends than I have men friends, actually.
Yeah. And I'm the opposite. I have more men friends than I have women friends, so we fit really well. That's amazing. Yeah.
So anyway, that's I think I just have a special place in my heart for strong women.
And I have a strong place in my heart for men willing to be vulnerable, which is really what attracted me to this book and the work that we do in workplaces as well, is that, these really often super stoic men are saying, let me show you this side of me. And some of them say, this is the scariest thing I've ever done. And yet they step into that fear and they disclose and they build community. And it's just been awesome. And Frank's been one of our storytellers. He's not only the editor and humorist and spokesperson, but he's also written a couple of our stories and has shared some of his experiences that are really powerful moments.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart working in this industry. And, it's fascinating to me when, I've had people come in and say, oh, I want to do podcast. I want to be the next Joe Rogan or the next Howard Stern. And I'm like, you understand that you're talking about mental health, right?
But you know what? So again, here at this conference today, there's, all these podcasters talking about what they talk about, and they do these A/B tests on what's most exciting to their audience. And this man said, surprisingly, mental health. This is a 20-something African-American man who's a fitness guru, and financial health guru. And he said, I'm shifting gears. I'm going to present on mental health now.
Whoa.
So I should recruit him.
Yes, please bring him onto the network. We need fitness people, as long as they don't say to me, just take a vitamin and do some squats.
No, he's literally wanting to shift gears to do just mental health stuff. And
so cool.
It's so great because especially in the African-American community, there's not a lot of men talking about mental health.
Oh, God. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I went to the most, it's so funny because the leader of the conference was like, Kristin, you realize that you're at the most minority ever conference. And I was like, I don't care. I'm coming. And it was the minority LGBTQI plus mental health conference.
Oh, fantastic.
And I loved it. I loved being there. And I was like, I don't care. This is what needs to be showcased. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you work, Sally, with people that just don't get it? They say, oh yeah, good for you that you do this. And then they don't do anything. Like, how do you deal with the, just keep on plugging? How do you deal with that for yourself?
I give people a little bit more anonymous ways to say me too, so that they can start to feel the power of the community that's been affected when, as you and I know, many people have stories. They just don't share them outwardly. So absolutely. I'll do anonymous polling and, give people the chance to share a little bit about their story without putting their name to it, kind of taking small steps into it. And when you see the transformation that people have from, you'll never get my people that talk about this ever, fill in the blank, firefighters, lawyers, pilots, you'll never get, and I'm like, watch me. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. And I just
one after my own heart. Yes.
I just need one person who has high credibility with their peers to even share the most, 50,000 foot level piece of their story, and people go, okay, well, if that person did it, I can too. And then you see this incredible momentum. So that's why I do it, because many years of banging your head against the wall, you get that one transformational pivot, and it's worth it all. It's worth it all. So it's the stories, it's connecting with people, watching the transformation. It's really actually not been much head banging lately.
Good.
I've got so much coming in the door now that I have had to stop opportunities, because it's just too much. So that's an exciting place to be after banging one's head against the wall for a decade, that people are finally just coming in the door. I don't even have to market. They're just coming in the door, and which is surprising, especially in the workplace. Again, people said, you'll never get people to talk about suicide in the workplace. It took a really long time, but now it's happening. Very exciting. We're actually launching the nation's first set of workplace suicide prevention guidelines today, which is also amazing. So now, workplaces will have a roadmap, but also a little bit of a standard to live into over time. We'll create a community of practice around it so they can learn from one another, and rather than it be something that people just pretend's not happening or is swept under the rug, people will have tools to help their community cope with it effectively.
And, what I did was I took the top 12 at-risk occupations for suicide, and of the 12,
Podcaster is number one, right?
yeah. And of the top 12, all of them are aware they've got a problem. Unfortunately, only three have actually become proactive as far as I can tell. Dentists first, then veterinarians came second, and Sally will probably take construction is getting on board. I think doctors are just about there, but the other...
Public safety's been involved for a while, so both firefighters and law enforcement, and to some degree Department of Corrections have also been engaged.
And I'm speaking at a safety conference, a bunch of safety managers from large commercial manufacturing, that kind of thing, where and they actually gave me a 10-minute TED Talk style spot on the main stage, first general session. They're going to have a couple of speakers, and they've never had a suicide prevention speaker. And the tact I'm going to take is, look, how many people here have had an active shooter drill? And that's a big thing in that safety industry. And I'm going to say, well, that's a good thing to do that. But the problem is it's way downstream. Active shooter drill, you're just trying to keep the body count down. What if we went farther upstream? What if you brought somebody in, me or somebody like me, to talk about suicide prevention? How do you recognize signs of depression, thoughts of suicide? That way you could perhaps catch them when they've got a beef and it's beginning to boil, and then bring in somebody after me who works on conflict resolution and resolve the conflict, so we never have to get far enough downstream that we have to put all this knowledge we learned in the active shooter drill to practice, which I think is going to be a revelation for them. The downstream. Why wait till it's a downstream problem? Why not go after it?
Before it gets downstream. Yeah.
Yeah. So the safety industry is also tumbling to the fact they've got an issue. And Sally, you taught me this. I think mental health, depression, substance use costs companies in the U.S. more than like heart disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes combined in terms of lost time, absenteeism, presenteeism, medical costs.
Yeah, it's one of those largely hidden costs because people don't necessarily see it, on people's outsides, but it's definitely affecting all kinds of things when it's untreated or mistreated, et cetera. All kinds of work productivity and morale and retention issues. So it's a huge issue, but I think you're right, Frank. It's the safety folks that are really leaning in. Again, we're bringing construction. I have the risk managers looking at me with bug eyes, going like, you mean that fall that we could never figure out?
Yeah.
All the safety training in the world won't stop that. You have to do something different because of the intent behind it. So yeah, the time has come. It's very exciting to have companies be proactive around this. Most of them are still reeling after a death, so not entirely proactive. They're still reacting, but more and more it's becoming a norm of safety professionals in particular, wellness to some degree, HR and so forth, So it's a good time to be doing this work. I get to see the transformation.
Sally, and something little known, and I got a call from a construction company, actually. They lost a 30-year employee in March of 2017. And I got a call in April 2017. They said, we want you to come and speak. And I said, well, we should probably do some postvention and then do prevention. And they said, no, we just want the prevention. And I said, okay. I said, when do you want to bring me in? They said, next March. A year later, I said, okay, I think they probably need some postvention immediately to process all that went on. Everybody's got questions. Sally, can you speak to people always talk about prevention, but there is a postvention element for the survivors in in a business. Everybody, like, a lot of times they just sweep it under the carpet. The guy's there one day, gone the next. They just sort of move on, and everybody's got questions. There's survivor's guilt, and I wish I'd called him, but I had to pick up my kid. Can you talk about postvention?
Yeah, well, how we handle the aftermath of a suicide matters greatly for all the people left behind, not only in helping them process grief and trauma, but also for people who may already be vulnerable to suicide. So the several months, actually, sometimes upwards of a year, depending on the circumstances of the suicide death, like whether or not it was on the work site and kind of the role the person played in the company, et cetera. There's all kinds of domino effects that happen. And so when you move directly from that point into prevention and tell people all the warning signs they missed, it doesn't always go well. People often feel, like Craig said, incredibly guilty. Oh, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. If I only did that thing, maybe they would still be here. And so giving people space to honor the life that was lost, the service that was given, the friendships that were made, just like we would any other death, that's often skipped. So all the grieving coworkers don't have a chance to do that memorialization. But also to do so in a way that's safe and effective for the people left behind. This is the unspeakable death for many people. They don't have language. They have all kinds of why questions, the canyon of why didn't they tell me, and so forth. So a very skilled, not all employee assistance programs are skilled in this. They're usually just skilled in straight up critical incident and trauma types of things, but there's lots of nuances with suicide. There's cultural and religious nuances and all kinds of things that make it complicated.
Sally, how do you deal with, because I've certainly had this happen. I have to admit it happens less than it did. So I feel like we are making a mark, and, I'm dealing with people all over the globe. So I'm seeing it happening in places like Australia, New Zealand, the United States, England, Ireland, and then other places are sort of trailing behind, but they're still catching up or evolving anyway in their attitude about suicide. So how do you deal with when you have such a deep, resonant conversation with someone that you're used to sharing, you're used to talking about these things, this is what you do, and you've heard it all, and you speak to someone who really, you're maybe the first person that they've opened up the way that they have, and then they sort of pivot back into the groove of what's comfortable for their regular life. And you're kind of witnessing that. And sometimes to me, it's a little bit of a shock at how much they will sort of discard the depth that they just went into with you as they walk back into what they have to deal with in their regular life. And that can be a little jarring. I've heard this from counselors. I've heard it from advocates and so on. And, it's not something to be passé about and say, oh, just get over it. I mean, that's a very real thing. And as someone that works in the field, it can be a little jarring. So how do you handle that sort of thing that happens?
So storytelling is a powerful thing, whether or not you just tell the story to yourself or tell it to your therapist or a partner or tell it to the world. And there's really great reasons to do that. It helps put a cohesive and redemptive narrative on something that feels very overwhelming. And there's power in shaping your story the way you want it. But there's also a lot of good reasons why people are hesitant or don't, or like you say, kind of crawl back in their shell. Discrimination and prejudice is a real thing. And it is hard to kind of show your vulnerability and then brace for impact, because most people will see courage and strength and respect that deeply. Mm-hmm. But we've also got some some people who are ready to use that against you.
Yes.
And so when we prepare people to share their story, we have them think it through before they get up on YouTube or in front of a media camera or, some other very public forum. Because today, as you know, once it's out, and there's no reeling it back in. So I respect people's pace on kind of the oscillation, if you will, between stepping into the vulnerability, stepping into the work, stepping into the advocacy, whatever it is, and then pulling back and doing some self-protection. It seems actually like a pretty healthy course for people for all the reasons that we have, family and cultural and religious upbringing, et cetera. Sometimes that oscillation goes back and forth for a really long time. And that's totally fine. It's everybody has their process. So I guess that's where I sit. Like, I respect it. I try hard to understand it. And again, the more storytellers that we have out there modeling, here's my arc of coming through this. Here's what I learned. Here's how I grew through it.
Here's what I did.
Here's what I did. And just, not only matter of factly just saying it's life. This happens to a lot of people, but conjuring up those emotions of inspiration and, the hero's journey, walking with people through that dark forest and seeing, how they get to the other side. I think we've had people coming out with their stories of addiction and depression and anxiety. Well, suicide in many ways is the last taboo. And now more and more storytellers are coming forward. And as I see that movement happening, it just invites other people to do the same. So I think we'll see that momentum continue to move forward.
I love that you prepare people. This is what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So blowback you could get. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the president of a nonprofit called United Suicide Survivors International, unitedsurvivors.org. And we actually launched an online course that people can take before they tell their story. It helps them think through, what is my why? What are the pros and cons for me and me in the future, and also other people in my story? Do I have a self-care plan for when I go back into the dark to meet some of these things? And if all of that is a yes, then we put them into the next course, which will launch hopefully later this year, that will walk them through best practices in safe and effective storytelling around suicide.
I cannot stress enough, listeners, how important it is to have a self-care plan. And I'm telling you from my own, journey on, with mental health and my own suicidal ideation, I was the first person to go, whatever, roll my eyes about a self-care plan. And it really, it makes such a huge difference. Even if you do it in private, as I did in the bathroom while you're cursing whoever told you to do it, it just makes a huge difference to write out what you're going to do. It's a letter to yourself. Mm-hmm. Don't have to share it with anybody if you don't want to. And it just sort of resonates in the back of your mind of that you are not always standing on a cliff ready to jump without a parachute.
Right. And sometimes when we're in those really dark places, I had my own experience with major depression a few years ago, like your problem solving abilities just go down the toilet and it's just tunnel vision. And so to have that written reminder, here's what you said you were going to do. Here's the 10 people you're going to call. Yep. Here's how you activate your mental health services. Here you go. It's really helpful to have that reminder.
It's so important too. I mean, and people, you'd be amazed. There are some people, here's with the, letting people know. I tell people, look, find people that you can share what's going on with you. And some of them you'll weed out that they're not really people that you can go to and say, I'm really struggling right now, because they run like the wind.
or they're super judgy.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
They just give you a ton of advice that you really don't need.
Yeah. And I know, like, Frank King is one of those people that I just did a couple weeks ago where I was like, I'm really struggling right now for whatever reason. I'm just having a really hard time and I'm just not at my chipper, peppy self. And I'm sorry if I'm seeming kind of bitchy, but I'm going through some stuff. And, Frank's like, hey, I'm a comedian. I've heard it all. So.
Well, and what did you tell me, Frank? tragedy plus time equals comedy. Like eventually, right? We often look back at the things that were so challenging with the lens of humor. So just know you're building like future comedy when you're going through these.
Oh,
things.
I've given Frank a whole set with my cuckoo behavior, right? Frank, are you still on?
Oh, we might have lost
Like
him.
muted us an hour ago.
That's right. Couldn't take you guys. So I'm like, no. And I often say in my keynote, and this is probably I'm probably going to get blowback occasionally, but I say, if you're suicidal, for goodness sakes, if you're having thoughts of suicide, call the Prevention Lifeline or text connect to 741-741. However, if you're just having a really bad day, you're just wretchedly depressed, call a fellow traveler. Call somebody who also battles similar issues, because, and I put my cell phone number up on the screen. I said, because we're not going to be judgmental generally. We're not going to should, as they say, we're not going to should all over you. You should do this and you should do that and you should try fish oil. And we're just going to listen and forgive the, I'll abbreviate actually. Friend of mine who is double diagnosed alcoholism and depression is a vet tech where we take our animals. And she said, yeah, I just want somebody to co-sign my BS. Somebody just to go, oh, dear God. And I saw her the other day. I took a pet in for a shot or something, and I was going back to the car, and she came out the parking lot, and she gave me a big hug, and she goes, oh, my God, I needed to see you today. It's just one of those days, somebody who understands. So, if you're struggling, it's a rather large community of us out there. So, that's part of my self-care plan. The guy that I work out with at the gym, he has Parkinson's. Fortunately, it's not progressing very quickly, but, he's one of those guys. He said to me one day, he goes, how you doing? I go, I'm depressed. And he didn't judge. He just said, well, tell me what that's like. And I said, well, do you remember when you were 18 years old and every other thought you had was about sex? He goes, yeah. He goes, what's your every other thought? I said, going back to bed and watching Netflix. So,
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, that's what it's like. It's like my bed is calling me from a distance. Come on.
It's the lover you always.
Come on, Dead to Me. You haven't watched the whole series yet. Come on. It's so good. So it's nice to have people, you can say that to, that won't freak them out. Because occasionally I have gotten where I'm really tired. Somebody asks how I am, and I tell them. And it was a Uber driver, and he goes, how you doing? I go, I'm depressed and suicidal. And he looked in the rearview mirror, and he goes, and what am I supposed to say to that? I said, do you really want to know? He goes, yeah. I go, you're supposed to say, do you have a plan? And so he goes, do you have a plan? And then there's this pause, and he goes, does it involve Uber? Oh, man, that's funny. So, but usually if you tell a normal person, they want to fix it, they want to help, they want to recommend something,
Yes.
Have you read A Course in Miracles?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
Greens, yeah.
Speaking of which, Marianne, what's her name? Course in Miracles.
And Marianne Williams said, yeah.
Yeah, was on with Bill Maher, and they're talking about how the celebrity suicides, I think a goodly number of them are induced by psychotropic medication that they'll prescribe. There's a difference between sadness. Everybody's sad. I'm like, oh God, this is not helpful. Not helpful. Yeah. So it's kind of like in dog training. One partner, husband or wife, takes the dog in, gets it trained not to jump. Other partner comes home, through the door, dog jumps, dog gets rewarded for jumping. You're the untrainer.
Yeah.
So with depression and such, we work very hard to educate the public, and then somebody comes along and goes, no, it's the evil pharmaceutical companies. They just want everybody hooked. Depression's not really a thing. Everybody's, has sadness. Oh God, please.
I know. I've had so many people. I tell you, and this is a whole other show, and maybe we'll edit this out of this one. I don't know, but I was telling someone the 800th person who's invited me to go to their church.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, okay, do you not understand how many times that I haven't been invited? And if I would just do that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying I'm depressed. They just know what I do, and they just want me to come, and maybe it'll influence all the people on the network to also follow this edict. and then they won't be suicidal. And I've learned, maybe because I'm going to be 50 in January, I don't know. I've learned to just be like, oh, I used to battle that, fight it, get depressed about it, whatever. And now I'm like, oh, well, you never know. While I'm looking at, my phone, like, when can I leave? Because you're not going to get through to everybody. And the people that I want to get through to are generally the people that are not saying a whole lot. They're usually the quiet ones. So, Sally, tell our listeners where they can, find out more about you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So SallySpencerThomas.com is my website, and there you'll find the Hope Illuminated podcast, as well as on this network, and also on Apple and Spotify, Google Play, and all the places. Today is World Suicide Prevention Day. So you follow along the hashtag WSPD, World Suicide Prevention Day. Our theme is about pulling together, which has been a big part of our conversation today, working together, the power of connection. Suicide Prevention Week is from the 9th to the 15th of September. You can follow along with hashtag Stop Suicide. But really, this is a full year effort. It's not just an awareness day or week or month. We have to engage with this all the time. And like Frank was talking about, it's not just pulling people out of the stream when they're drowning. It's getting upstream from that and helping them build resilience, and also making the world a little less toxic. It's not all about troubled people. It's often about a very troubled world. And so there's a lot of things that we can clean up in our workplaces and schools and so on. So I'm really grateful to be here. It's been super fun, as always, with Frank King telling his amazing yarns. And I'm just really grateful for you, Kristin, and Frank, for introducing me to you, because what you're doing here is amazing, bringing all of our stories and our messages together on one platform for us to get to meet each other and leverage each other's work. And it's just a beautiful vision. And I'm so grateful that you pulled it together and that I'm now a part of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm honored. You all do the work. I feel so grateful. People are going to gag as I say this, but I really mean it. I'm not just saying this. I look at everything that everybody does and I'm like, how in the hell did I end up with these people? Oh my God. So,
can I just close with one call to action for the listeners? So tonight, wherever you are in the world, tonight at 8 p.m., if you would just light a candle in your window. This is part of the International Association of Suicide Prevention's annual ritual. Light a candle in your window. It could be for someone you've lost to honor their life. It could be for someone you're worried about. It could be for your own resilience, your own coming through this, or your own current challenges. Light a candle in the window, 8 p.m., and just know that you'll sit in the glow of that candle in solidarity with millions of other people who are participating.
Beautifully said. Absolutely. Thank you, Sally. Thank you so much. And thank you, Frank, for coming on and doing this show on a very important day.
Thank you both. Take care.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health News Radio.
I know, no one likes commercials, but seriously, folks, without the help from these organizations, we could not stay on the air. Please give a shout out to zencharts.com. If you're a mental health or addiction treatment center, you'll want to use their EHR. It's gorgeous, and they're just good people. And also MyGenetics, MyGenetx.com, because knowing your genetic code empowers your mental health treatment. And lastly, CopeNotes.com. We love getting positive messages right to our phones every day from Johnny Crowder. He's the lead singer of Prison, a heavy metal band sharing their music about suicide prevention, addiction recovery, and mental health. See, that was painless. Support them as they support us. Back to the show.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song Cordial for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it.
Good boy.